What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Celtics Talk Weekly postgame show. I am your host, Rob Atayan. We got a full crew tonight, guys. With me is Justin Lowe, Seamus IIanangelo, IIanangelo, and my boy Franco. Guys, first loss of the season feels pretty weird for us Celtics fans, but it had to come at some point. The Celtics fall to 5-1 on the road in an overtime thriller against the Minnesota Timberwolves, 114-109. Jason Tatum led the way for the Celtics. He scored 32 points. Tonight, Kristaps Porzingis helped along with 20, and then Jaylen Brown had 26. We got a lot to talk about, guys. A lot of good and some bad. You might argue a lot of bad and some good. It obviously no Derek White tonight for the Celtics. It was a weird game. A lot of turnovers, a lot of fouls, a really slow-paced, strange game. You guys know the drill. Justin, I'm going to start it with you, and then we'll go down the line. Your initial thoughts, takeaways, opinions on tonight's loss.
Yeah, this was a game from the tip. It was a very awkward game. I think it just didn't have that feel, right? Like we saw the Tatum or the Brown poster. Celtics kind of started off solid early, but they weren't really able to grasp any kind of sort of momentum all game long. And neither was the Timberwolves at all either. Each team would have their respective 8-2 run, a 6-1 run, whatever the case may be. But nothing ever came about it for either team except for the Timberwolves in the end. Got to overtime, and it got hectic. It got extremely, extremely – I feel like the Celtics were just stagnant as it came down the stretch. I didn't really see the Celtics panic like this in the previous 5 games or 4 games. Tonight I saw that. Didn't like what I saw at the end of the game, but you can't go 82-0. You're not going to go 82-0. 81-1 still in play.
It's in the cards.
It is in the cards.
Yeah, I was watching some of our old podcasts or really post games from 2021 before the Celtics were good, before the Celtics reached the pinnacle in which they reached, which was the NBA Finals. The Celtics kind of looked like the 2021 Celtics down the stretch tonight. The offense really just did not click down the stretch. They really weren't getting any good shots, and I do credit a lot of that to Minnesota's defense. They played a lot of good on-ball defense on the perimeter, and of course, Rudy Gobert. I've not been a Rudy Gobert fan for a while now, with his contract and with how many assets, of course, Minnesota gave up for him. However, you can see the effect that he does bring defensively, of course, tonight against Tatum and Brown and all of our other guys just going towards the rim, stifled by the what is his nickname? The Stifled Tower. That's a great nickname for Rudy Gobert because that's exactly what he did to the Celtics tonight. And ultimately down the stretch, you could tell they kind of missed Derek White a little bit in this game. Derek White gives them the ability to play different styles and mix and match different versatility in certain lineups. And ultimately, ultimately tonight, they could play with Horford and Porzingis, and they play with that lineup a lot, and that was a good lineup to play with against a Minnesota Timberwolves team with Towns and Gobert and Naz Reid. However, you could tell the Celtics were lacking a little bit of that versatility tonight, and down the stretch, it kind of affected their offense a little bit. And I kind of blame a little bit of this loss, too, on the lack of timeouts being called in overtime. Now, you could argue this and say the game was just about over in overtime. However, I thought there was a lot of mismanagement. I don't want to put the whole game on Joe Mazzulla, of course, because our players played out there and we're going to talk about other flaws. But you see in this game down the stretch, I thought this game was just haphazardly managed. You saw we needed a timeout. We had timeouts down the stretch, and I have no idea why they weren't called. Tatum and Brown looked like they were playing, like I said, in 2021. They weren't getting good shots. They weren't getting good possessions. They looked hectic. And, I mean, what else can you say? What else can you say about overtime and down the stretch? Just not a great performance from the Celtics. But from this game, you can take away positives, and, of course, there are a ton of negatives to take away. But we'll get to both in this episode.
Yeah, the Celtics just kind of collapsed at the end of the game. That's pretty much all there really was to say about it. Actually, they kind of collapsed throughout the entire second half of that game, actually. They had like 19 points in the third quarter as a whole. it was just not a good showing at all. I think one of the biggest problems in this game was they were not getting Jason Tatum the ball enough. It was a really simple equation that they should have been following. If you give Jason Tatum the ball, good things happen most of the time. And it just felt like throughout the second half, it didn't feel like they tried getting Jason Tatum the ball enough. And especially in the fourth quarter, when he started the fourth quarter on fire, and then it felt like he didn't touch the ball the rest of the game, and he was immediately out of rhythm. So, I mean, that happens. It's the beginning of the season. Things like that are going to happen. In overtime, I don't even know what the hell that
Stunk.
was. That was
Stunk.
just that was
And it was
just
2021
nothing.
again. It was literally 2021 again. It was
Yeah,
literally
that was
2021 again. Now, I think this team is totally different, but it was literally 2021 again down the stretch for this
Yeah,
team.
it
I mean,
was.
it was literally no timeouts. We're going to let you play. And Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, unfortunately, now we know that they've ascended beyond their 2021 selves and can play a lot better, which is why this is a little bit frustrating now. They just were not taking good shots. They weren't taking good shots, and they weren't creating good possessions for themselves down the stretch. And I do account a lot of that for the fact of, hey, can we just call a timeout, slow it down, get to the sidelines, draw up an ATO, draw up a play to get ourselves a bucket? Can we get something going here rather than just, all right, go, you play, go. Because,
especially in that heart of a Minnesota crowd. It was just a bumping arena. They had the home court advantage that entire game. And during the fourth quarter, when Tatum was hitting those shots, it really silenced them. And then they started to feed the ball into other people's hands. And they really don't know how to spread out the flavoring amongst everyone. Once someone's hot, they need to figure out how to get it to another person so you can have multiple people on the court that can be a threat instead of just the one person who has taken 4 shots in a row. I mean, it's going to come with time, but once they start to spread the ball around, there were a couple of drives with Sam Hauser getting the ball in the corner after they fed everyone, created those mismatches, got those double teams on Tatum, pulled the ball away from Pritchard, and it just clicks a lot more when they start spreading it out.
Yeah, I thought Boston had a tough time getting it to Jason Tatum tonight, specifically in that second quarter when Missoula decided to throw in the main Celtics for a random 3 minutes. Svi Mikhailuk and Lance Stevens, or what is that? Lamar Stevens.
Lamar Stevens,
yeah.
yeah.
But he played them for a random 3 minutes. I just feel like when the ball needed to get into Tatum's hands, specifically down in the post, Celtics had a really hard time trying to figure that out. I thought they also had a really hard time trying to get it down to Porzingis late in the game. Some things that we can brush up on, but those two things specifically kind of raised an eyebrow for me tonight. I think Jason Tatum is so good in the post, and he's been so good in the post and in that mid-range game so far this season. Tonight, I would have liked to see a little bit more of that, but you're not going to win them all, Rob.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to win them all for sure. Tonight, we looked like a team that hasn't played a lot of basketball together, which is normal. You guys kind of all pieced into it. It's going to take time. And we were saying that when they were winning games, and you say it when they lose games, right? 25 games it usually takes to assess where a team's at. And even still, we've seen it with our own team. Sometimes it takes longer. I think I saw some things that were just a little first of all, you're not going to win a basketball game when you're shooting 28% from 3. And, that's not going to happen every night. And if it does happen every night, well, then we'll start worrying. You shot 39% from the floor. You took them to overtime, the best defensive team in the league. You forced 23 turnovers. You played a good basketball game for the most part. For the style in which the game was going, the pace in which the game was being played at, a lot of fouls, a lot of choppiness, that favors Minnesota. They are a phenomenal half-court defense. They like to slow the game down. They like to get Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert in that pick-and-roll action, and they're going to attack you that way. That's exactly what they did tonight. And I said it in the first 5 games. That's how you beat the Boston Celtics, is you got to catch us on a bad shooting night, and you have to really play phenomenal defense. The Timberwolves did that. And credit goes to Minnesota because defensively, that's a real team. I mean, those guys in Minnesota, I mean, those guys, they got a good team. And we caught
Best
Karl
hitting
Anthony
in the league,
Towns.
right?
Best defensive team in the league. Credit goes to Drew Holiday. We got Cat on a bad night. McDaniels did his thing. He started off 1 for 9, 1 for 8, and finished the game absolutely phenomenal, 7-10 from there on out. So again, frustrating loss, but it's a loss in which it was expected. It's going to happen. You're going to run into a team in which at some point they've been together longer than you. They're a really good team. You're going to have an off shooting out. You're missing Derek White. When you're missing one of the starters, when you're missing one of our starters, it really thins out this team. So this team really is dependent on health. Minnesota's a good team. I'm not super worried. However, that brings us into our player of the game, Mr. Jason Tatum. He was kind of felt like the only guy that really had it going tonight at times, down through 48 minutes. Brown, obviously, he did his thing. That graphic is wrong. It is 32 points. I'm sorry. I messed that up. The NBA app didn't refresh. He had 32 points tonight, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 5 steals, shot 54.5% from the floor. JT was pretty solid. He shot 2 of 8, but you can't nitpick for JT. He had a solid game. He is still on top of the player of the game tracker. This is his 3rd win. He won last game. He's in the lead, and he won this game. So you can't give him all colors. So I just gave him red. Now, Justin, you've seen this team play offensively be phenomenal. One of the most unstoppable offensive teams in the league, and then you saw them go toe-to-toe defensively with the best defensive team in the league. What's this team's identity going to be? Is it offense or defense?
I think it's whatever they want it to be. I really do. And it sounds like such a cop-out answer, but I think what tonight, and I told you this pregame, tonight, I really wasn't expecting the Celtics to win this game. I'm not trying to be a whole LeBron James, like, oh, I called this loss type thing. I don't know. I just had this weird, odd feeling. But if the Celtics were going to lose a game this year, I didn't want it to be like how they lost games last year, where they were shooting 39% and they were letting that dictate their defense. I didn't really see that tonight. The Celtics didn't really get discouraged of their shots. They stayed at it defensively, and I think they left it all on the floor defensively. They got to start hitting their open shots. Guys like Peyton Pritchard, I get it. It might start with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but it also guys like Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, they got to start hitting shots, right? Like Peyton Pritchard struggled tonight. Sam Hauser hit a few shots. I don't know what the hell that was at the end of the game. It was one of the worst shots I think I've ever seen. I'm going to be honest. It was pretty bad.
Left too.
Yeah, it was a brutal shot, but I really do think this Celtics team, I'm not sure what this identity is going to be, because I think they have the capability of being historically good on both ends of the floor. But I think they definitely are more focusing on hanging their hat on the defensive end and then letting their defense dictate their offense, getting opportunities, whether that be in transition, whether that be finishing off a defensive possession and getting the rebound and then, running that set. I really do think it's whatever the Celtics believe that they can do.
Right. So, I feel like, again, you bring up two couple names that I know everyone feels strongly about. And those 3 names are Hauser, Pritchard, and Cornette. Hauser was like streak. It's just, he's been who he is the first 6 games, is streaky. 3 of 8, 11 points. And he was really, him and Cornette were the only 2 people scoring off the bench. But I think a name in which we have to talk about is Peyton Pritchard, a guy who we just extended. He, in the nicest way possible, Seamus, has been nothing shy of disappointing. I mean, what does this guy have to do? I mean, what is he doing wrong in order for him to kind of get back on track?
Well, to me, I think the expectations maybe need to be adjusted just a little bit on Pritchard, but also I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing for him or not, because you just look at the bench right now for the Celtics, and they don't have Derek White tonight. And, just looking at the last couple of years, just the last 2 years, and, you can go back even further if you want. It's pretty much every year with the Celtics. There's typically somebody who misses time here and there. There's somebody who typically misses time in the playoffs. A couple years ago, it was Robert Williams. Last year was Malcolm Brogdon in the Eastern Conference Finals. Well, tonight we were missing Derek White, and you look at the bench, and you're just not impressed. I mean, who's impressed by this bench tonight? You have our starters playing essentially playoff minutes tonight. Tatum 42, almost 43 minutes, really 43 minutes. Horford 36 minutes tonight. Porzingis 36 minutes. Brown almost 40 minutes tonight. Drew Holiday 41 minutes tonight. You go to the bench, the three guys who receive minutes off the bench, Hauser, Pritchard, Cornette, they all play 15 to 20 minutes. And outside of that, like you guys mentioned, Svi and Lamar Stevens both had random 3-4 minute stints. These guys are really not impressing anybody. They're really into the bench guys, but you saw tonight somebody has to be the sixth man. Somebody has to be the sixth man, and I believe Sam Hauser can be a fringe rotation guy. I think they can use him like they used him last year, but at this point, he's their sixth man out there. You really expect Pritchard to be your sixth man, and he was a plus 13 tonight, although I don't really put too much stock into individual plus minuses because lineups just change and shift and are so different. You probably have to look at the whole lineup as a whole, but you're not really just the amount of minutes that these guys are playing right now, just without Derek White, or even if Derek White is in the lineup, some of these guys, you're talking about Cornette on some nights, you're talking about Pritchard, of course, on some nights, they're going to play past 20 minutes, and I just don't really know if they can produce at that level consistently. Pritchard, I love his competitiveness. You hear all the stories about Pritchard, and I want to believe in him as an NBA player, but he's just not consistent. He's not consistent at putting the ball in the basket, and I think some of that is because he's about 5'10", 5'11", 6 foot, and that's always going to be something about guys who are that height, is that they're going to be compromised a little bit defensively. And if they can't put the ball in the basket, things become a little wonky with them out there. But I think Peyton Pritchard, at least the least you can say about him is the fact he is a competitive player. When he's out there, he is getting after it defensively. He is making it tough at the point of attack on some guys. But off the bench, just ultimately with him and everybody else, the amount of minutes in which they're playing when somebody is out, especially like tonight with Derek White being out, you're just really not confident that these players are really going to produce at that high of volume, and they're really fringe rotation players at the end of the day. So I don't know. The Celtics, I think you're kind of looking at this going, we have a really good roster at the top, and this is probably the best iteration of our roster to win a championship potentially. But we probably need one more minutes eater, just one more minutes eater, because you see tonight we don't have Derek White, who's really a starter, but could be our sixth man. Al Horford's really our sixth man right now. If one of those guys aren't in the lineup, it's thin. It's really thin. It's really thin.
Pray multiple weak injuries.
The more I look at the box score, I'm just like, this isn't going to happen every night. And it's going to happen I've said it earlier, but 29. Something that screams to me is Jason Tatum's turnovers to assists. The Celtics are at their best. Everyone knows it when Tatum's passing the ball well. 6 turnovers to assists. Do you know what that tells me? That tells me that Minnesota's defense was absolutely just suffocating the Celtics. At the end of the day, yeah, we shot bad, but credit goes to Minnesota. That defense, I really think that's how they're going to win games, the big time games. They're going to hang their hats on defense, and when you're missing a guy like Derek White, Seamus, you said it. You get thin, and when you get thin on a regular season, that type of stuff happens. I think this Celtics team is still figuring it out, and I don't know. Am I off?
And I'm not mistaken. Is this our second road game in a row, correct? So, and it's our third road game
second in a row. Third.
Wait, which one came first, Indiana or Washington? I can't remember. I think
Washington came first, then Indiana, then Brooklyn, then Minnesota.
So we're on the road for Washington. Come back home for a second for Indiana. Drop 155 points, which is insane. And that's a lot of cardio. I mean, you got to run up and down the floor a lot to get 155 points. And then we go on the road. That Brooklyn game was kind of tough the other night. Tonight we go into Minnesota. They're a tough team. I would argue too, like Minnesota hit a ton of tough shots down the stretch. Anthony Edwards,
it's the real deal, dude.
I mean, he's definitely. I think this might be that leap year for him. I mean, you could argue that it could have been, I mean, he's already kind of a star, but this could really be a leap year for him. The way, say, Tatum broke out in his
fourth
2021, 22, really.
Yeah.
That was really when Tatum was like, ooh, he could be MVP. He's not just an all-star, he's an MVP. That could be Anthony Edwards. We could be seeing that from him this season. He was 15 or 25 tonight, not too shabby from him in Minnesota. And circumstantially, too, the Celtics, weird bad loss, like weird collapse down the stretch, didn't shoot well. But, like, it's not all bad. It's not all bad circumstantially. And the fact, like I just said, Anthony Edwards, he was awesome tonight. He was awesome in Minnesota in a whole. They were hitting tough shots and making great plays defensively.
Yeah. So something I want to talk about the bench, specifically about Peyton Pritchard. I don't really see a world where he's going to be a legitimate six-man on an NBA team. I don't see it. I really don't. Just look at these. This is his minutes and his points throughout the entire season so far. First game, 11 minutes, he had 4 points. Second game, 13 minutes, 3 points. Third game, 25 minutes, 0 points. Fourth game, that was the Indiana game, so everyone played. 26 minutes, 15 points. And then last 2 games, 19 minutes, 0 points, 20 minutes tonight, 0 points. Like, he's not a scorer. He's not an amazing facilitator, even though, he was okay. I mean, he had 3 assists tonight. He had 6 rebounds, which was cool. But I really don't see a world where Peyton Pritchard's going to be a legitimate bench option, and I can easily see him getting traded at the deadline for somebody else. And, I mean, that's not just because the Celtics lost tonight and he's had a bad game. This is just something that I thought of ever since that he signed the contract extension. This is pretty much just going to be like a filler contract extension. And the guard play, we've been talking about the Celtics needing backup big men depth. And that's true. The Celtics do need that. The Celtics also need better guard play. And we know Derek White wasn't there tonight, but Drew Holiday, 4 of 16 shooting. I mean, he had 11 rebounds and 6 assists, so that was cool, but he was not doing well at all throughout most of this game. And then Peyton Pritchard's your only other guard on the roster. So if I'm the Celtics, as much as big man depth is a problem and it needs to be addressed, guard depth also needs to be addressed as well. Because outside of those, outside of White, Holiday, and Pritchard, there's no other guards on this roster. And there's no other guards that I would trust personally on this roster. So if I'm him, I'm looking through, the deadline, looking for somebody that can be a guard play and somebody that for a backup center. Because we do have Banton. He's cool, but I don't trust Delano Banton either. So,
I mean, you honestly make a good point because, like, we were so stressed. And again, Derek White's out. So it's like, no Derek White against a good defensive team, right? It might hinder some things. You might look a lot worse than those guys actually are on a game-to-game basis. The idea, I guess, is in an 8-man, 7-man rotation in the playoffs. That's not a worry. But I mean, I think you nailed it, Ian. Everyone kind of, us included, big time us, right? We're worried about like big man and Cornette, and is this going to work? But honestly, if you ask me, Cornette's looked actually pretty solid. The past couple games, he's looked like a very, very serviceable third string center. And I'm not going to lie, guys like Hauser and Pritchard have looked offensively scoring, have looked bad. And how long have I been saying this, guys? If you're an offensive player, a scorer, and you're not scoring, what are you doing on the court? What else what impact are you making? And when Hauser and Pritchard are out there, Hauser is definitely not making an impact if he's not shooting the ball at a high clip. And if Pritchard isn't facilitating and getting 6 or 7 assists,
which I don't think he's ever done.
right? I mean, he just really is not like he doesn't make an impact. And with this team, when you have six guys or five guys that can score as well as these guys can score, you don't need offense. You don't need scoring off the bench. You really just need good defenders, good spacers, hard-nosed guys, and we have that. Brissett and Steve, we have those types of guys. So I definitely think a question has been raised on that guard play.
Yeah, and I think they've just been buried. These stars that we've been talking about, I've been saying it the past 3 or 4 games. Brissett, Stevens, Banton, they should be getting as equal opportunities as Hauser, Pritchard, and Cornette right now for these minutes. The guys who have been around are being a little bit more coddled because they quote unquote know the system a little bit more, but it's still a growing system, and you can really just mend those guys together and just try to figure out what's going to work. We've seen the hustle and big defensive plays, the rebounding that we desperately need on the court with Brown and Tatum out of Brissett and Stevens. So I just have no reason why they shouldn't be running those guys basically every other night. Whose night is it to be the eighth man? Either Hauser or Mikhailu. Just switch it up until someone gets hot, and if they stick, they stick.
Especially in a game like tonight, where it's like Hauser shouldn't be on a court or on the court in a game like this, where it's like super like rugged and super slow, and it's just like back and forth, and it's just like it's not a type of game in which you want Sam Hauser out there. But I gotta say something.
It's like it's a little weird with Sam Hauser because on one hand, you can argue that O'Shea, Brissett, and Banton, well, specifically Brissett, might be a better matchup.
Brissett needs to play. Oh my God, Brissett needs to play.
He was questionable. He was questionable.
I don't know. I wouldn't give Hauser maybe 25 minutes as he received tonight, but I can kind of see like how the philosophy is you want to space out and pull Minnesota more out to the perimeter because, I mean, I just find it a little weird. Like, this loss is not bad for the Celtics, but I just find it weird that we lost this game because of how awful Karl Anthony Towns was. And then ultimately, like, yeah, we shot terribly, but I felt like we were still getting good looks. We shot the ball, I believe, more than Minnesota when it came down to it at the end. Is that correct? 85 shots Minnesota had to our 92. So not a huge discrepancy, but and the turnover battle too. We didn't take care of the ball at all tonight. 16 turnovers, but neither did they. They had 23 turnovers. So I mean, I don't know. This is a game where I feel like the Celtics maybe win this like 7 out of 10 times. And
you just caught us on a bad night.
They really like if Hauser goes 5 of 8, do we win? Like if Hauser just goes like 5
or
of 8,
if Holiday makes 4 more layups that he was right next to the rim for.
And yeah,
it's just like,
can we talk about that for just 2 seconds? This is kind of the experience with Jrue Holiday. Like under all the circumstances, we should have made that trade. And I mean, having Jrue Holiday, like, I mean, it's a no-brainer to have him on the Celtics roster. But these are some of the nights you are going to have out of him. We saw this when he was playing with the Bucks a couple of times in the playoffs where he just could not hit a 3. He couldn't hit a shot. He was 4 of 16 tonight. We've seen that in the past with him a couple of times where you'll just get these kind of nights from him where he's still playing elite defensively, still making a huge impact on the game, but then he just can't make a shot. So I don't know. Some of this is like, say Jrue Holiday, some of this is like implemented as a almost constant where if you get a good game out of Jrue Holiday, like we're going to win most of those games. But this is what it's going to look like on some nights with Jrue Holiday in terms of his shooting. And
especially when White's not
going to pay.
Yeah. Especially when White's not in.
Mm-hmm. Because there's more responsibility on him as well. Like if White plays, just Hauser and Holiday, they take a combined, 24 shots tonight. you think those are probably distributed a little bit better? I think probably so.
Well, so I hate to change the topic, but I need to make a public service announcement, and it really goes to Ian and Justin. Kind of Seamus. Franco, you weren't around back then, but we got this ongoing joke that I'm a terrible bettor and I lose all my money on gambling.
It's not a joke.
So this.
Serious.
No, well, hold on. Let me finish. So this year, I thought I'd take it upon myself to come out in every game. If you follow us on Instagram, I have Rob same game parlay. And listen, I just gotta say something.
I hope nobody
Rob,
ever
same game
follows your
parlay.
lead.
So can I just say something right here? This was the same game. I'm on a hot streak right now. Current record standing, I have 13 picks right to 5 wrong. Drew Holiday over 25 points, rebounds, and assists, smack. Jaylen Brown over 20.5 points, smack. The over, it was a sweat, but hey, a win's a win in my books. And then Kristaps Porzingis over 3s, smacked. So currently standing, Justin, Ian, Seamus.
You know what's funny?
Hey,
I'm
just saying. Have you ever heard the expression "a broken clock is right twice a day"?
Wait, time out. Wait, what is your record this year?
So 13-5 total picks. 13 picks I've gotten right. 5 I've gotten wrong. I am 2-2. I want to say 2 have cashed, 2 haven't. I haven't done 2 games. I don't think I've done same game parlays on 2 games.
Okay, so
his rent must be due.
So 2-2. That 2-2 is pretty good for a 4-leg parlay. Gotta say.
I mean, should I pull it up? I mean 13 picks right, 5 wrong.
2-2 is quite good for a 4-leg parlay. Now, there's like 70 however many games left, but that's a really good start. I mean, if you were to calculate however many units you're up right now, you're up, quite a bit already.
A whole lot of units, Justin. You hear that?
A whole lot of units. That kind of sounds like a Twitter name.
When you fall below 500, I hope you post this.
I will. You know what? Every we're gonna do it. It's gonna be a segment. It's gonna be Rob's same game parlay.
I don't want your downfall.
Too bad. I'm writing it.
Your downfall is gonna come, and it's gonna come hard.
Listen, man.
Ian, relax, bro.
No, but listen, man. I mean, I'm proving everyone wrong. I feel like I feel. I feel like I'm truly having myself an MVP start to the season off this beautiful performance I'm putting out for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Just
saying.
Yeah,
for us. Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
I'm just saying, if you tail my picks, man, I'm in all seriousness. Gambling. Be careful with gambling. I do it for fun. I don't condone gambling, but
that's awful.
Has a whole segment about the same game parlay. Doesn't condone gambling.
Well, listen, you got to be careful. It's a touchy subject sometimes. I don't know how people feel, and all seriousness, gambling is an addiction. So just be careful with it if you do it.
Yeah, but we also want all these sports books to sponsor us. So
yeah, so DraftKings, FanDuel, I'm putting out some good plays. You know what I'm saying?
No, they don't know what you're saying.
They don't.
They don't want to know what you're saying. How was that grab? Yeah. I mean, look. Okay, so what are you putting on the Philly game then?
In terms of what I like, I have to look at the lines. I mean, listen, Philly is it's a matchup that doesn't really favor Porzingis on the glass. But I mean, again, I think Porzingis 1.5 threes. If they're going to sit his line there, I'm going to take that every single time in games where they have slow big men that like to play in the paint, because they're going to run that pick and fade, and he's going to sit by that 3. I mean, he took 8 threes tonight. If he's going to, the volume's there. So I like Porzingis. I'm going to get into it. Stay tuned. But a little preview. I like Porzingis a lot because I think Embiid is a mismatch offensive or defensively for Porzingis. I think he doesn't want to chase him around the perimeter all game.
So the Wizards and the Pacers are just electing to we're not going to play any defense. We're just going to run the floor this year.
Hey, I mean, you know what? That's a fun style of basketball, honestly.
Yeah, and
it's fun to watch, especially when your team blows them up by 50.
See, it's one of those things where every single night these fans of these teams are going to feel like they're going to feel so exhilarated from what they see on offense, and then they're going to look at the final score and go, wait, what? We gave up 140? We gave up
That's
140.
That's what Hornets fans have been feeling for the last 5 years. So
The Hawks.
You know who looked really good?
Diddly D in their ear, and they feel so good about it, and then they look.
I know
at the
they win.
scoreboard.
They win one game. They win one game 145 to 143, and they think it's.
You know who's looked really good? The Rockets. Those Ime-led Rockets, they're 3 in a row right now. They look good.
Their entire roster is different. I don't want to get too far off into a tangent on the Rockets, but their entire roster, I mean, the last couple of years, it was a nothing roster. And now they have Ime, who we know completely changed the complexity of the Celtics. He's down there in Houston now. And that roster is completely different. They have many more veterans now. I believe 8 players who are nobody. I don't want to say nobody because, if you make the NBA, you're not a nobody. But,
you're somebody.
But,
I'm a nobody.
In terms of relative competition to the real NBA talent, a lot of these players don't really hold a candle. And the Rockets had literally 8 of these guys on the roster that they don't have anymore, and they replaced them with real names. So I actually do expect the Rockets to be a little bit better this year. But I do want to talk a little bit real quick on the benches real quick. We talked about the Celtics bench, how thin it is. Our guys off the bench tonight, Hauser, Cornette, Pritchard, they played. Cornette played 15 minutes. Pritchard and Hauser played over 20 minutes, and then Spee and Lamar Stevens both played spot 4 minutes. But you look at Minnesota's bench tonight, just pointing this out real quick. Who came off the bench for them? Nickeil Alexander-Walker, not really a pushover. He played 20 minutes tonight. Naz Reid, super versatile player, 25 minutes tonight. Kyle Anderson, I mean, he's a vet that we would like to have him off our bench right now. Kyle Anderson, although he was 1 of 6, his presence is much more than his scoring out there. And he played 25 minutes. And then even Shake Milton, who we've seen play good minutes for the Sixers in the past, he only played 3 minutes tonight. They barely used him. Jordan McLaughlin, who they used in the past, he only played 4 minutes tonight. So all of their bench players have experience either being starters or rotation players for other teams, and even with this Minnesota team. And the Celtics bench tonight was just guys you probably just really don't want in the rotation. That's just the reality.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to your Rockets point, by the way, if you don't know, Dylan Brooks is shooting 50, 40, 90 this year, which is kind of nuts to start the year.
He had his first bad game tonight, which is I was surprised.
Why are we?
And then, for the bench, I mean, we talked about it earlier. It's just going to be one of those things where, if you get anything out of it, it's cool. And I feel like even though we started tonight, we have to talk about Al Horford.
Right.
He's definitely we're pretty much just gonna have to hope. We're gonna have to
Say the grapevine. Say the grapevine.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it. But he's not. He did not look very good tonight. Even though his plus minus has looked good over the last couple of days, I don't really take plus minus that seriously. It's just one of those things where it's I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see because he's pretty much going to be our 6th man when Derek White is there. So
this was the question I posed at the beginning of the season. And again, it's one loss, right? So we don't have to shake everything up. I remember something I said at the beginning of the year was before the podcast, before the season started, was, maybe we don't start White. I mean, again, White's a caliber player. You have to start, but it's just you look at the bench and you're thinking to yourself, all right, your rotations have to be spot on if you don't have a guy running the bench unit. They have to be spot on. And I think we can get there. But I look at this and, something about it says, if you start a guy like Hauser or Brissett, then you're sitting there and you're thinking, all right, well, he's going to play better because he's running with the ones in his time. So you start him for the 6 minutes. And I just think there's a way that maybe if this does continue, you could get more production out of these guys by maybe mixing up the rotation. But at the same time, it's Derek White, I think, has entered a category of player where you start Derek White. Derek White is a starter in the NBA. You can't bring him off the bench anymore. And he's just played so well. So we'll see. I mean, I think Wednesday night at Philly, I think it's going to be a phenomenal game. I think we're going to come back. I think we're going to bounce back.
Game. That's ridiculous. They're really giving it to Wembanyama here.
There
It's
is a game.
It's
ESPN.
Spurs and Knicks.
That's ridiculous. Celtics Sixers, that's classic. All right, well, listen, before we end off the show, because we are coming close to our time, you guys know the drill. Final thoughts, final takeaways. If you got something on your chest that you want to get off, say it now. Now's the time. Just take it away, guys.
Get the white
Here.
back.
Here, ready? Former friend of the show, Grant Williams, is shooting 55% from the field and 56% from three with the Dallas Mavericks so far. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, I feel like, if you really just strip down the Celtics roster from where it was 2 years ago to now, you kind of realize that the Celtics replaced Horford's minutes from 2 years ago with Porzingis' minutes now, and Robert Williams' minutes from 2 years ago is now Horford's minutes, and then you replace Marcus Smart's minutes with Drew Holiday, and then after that, you pretty much don't have Daniel Tice and Grant Williams anymore. And I think Grant Williams, it's kind of easy to say, like, okay, we moved on from him. We probably played it. Like, there was, which game was it? I believe it was game two of the Eastern Conference Finals, where Joe just left Grant Williams in the game after he was talking to Jimmy Butler, and eventually we lost that game down the stretch. And there was a lot of talk of, oh man, did we leave in Grant Williams too long? And there were times last year where Grant Williams lost minutes. I mean, even the game I went to last year, he received a DNP-CD. And it seems like the narrative is like, okay, well, Grant Williams, he's gone. Was he really worth this money? We weren't going to pay him this money. He's in Dallas now. But I think the loss of Grant Williams is going to be a little bit bigger than people realize, because, I mean, he was a really good, solid defensive player at the end of the day. Offensively, he hit a lot of corner threes. That's one of the most efficient shots in the NBA in basketball. He hit a lot of those for the Celtics. You're seeing with the Mavericks, he's way more of a cerebral player. He's way higher. He's way, his IQ is way higher than what may have been realized in Boston as a player, just because of the fact he was around so many other high IQs in Boston that it got a little overshadowed. And I kind of believe that Grant Williams now in Dallas, he's going to make a big impact down there. And the Celtics, we see with their bench tonight, they're giving all of what would be Grant Williams minutes in the past to Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, Luke Cornett. That's really not those guys are not going to be as productive as Grant Williams. And in the long run, I think the top of the roster can be better than the top of the roster of past years. However, we're going to see that losing Grant Williams is going to be a bigger impact than people realize on this Celtics team. Just not having him eat minutes and be that forward that comes off the bench, that physical, versatile forward that comes off the bench next to Tatum and Brown.
Yeah, would be if he was our sixth man or seventh man tonight, that would be pretty helpful.
Dude, I just made everybody realize it's like, oh man, we don't have Grant Williams anymore.
Oh my God. Well, no, I don't think it's that. I think it's just, I mean, we've also seen in the past that Grant Williams can get hot from three, and he can be a really great shooter at times. And then there's also times where he just doesn't know how to play basketball sometimes. And that's not really anything against him. It just kind of happened It just kind of happened with the Celtics. And we weren't going to be able to pay him regardless. And we probably wouldn't have gotten Porzingis and Holiday if we decided to pay Grant. So it sucks, but all we can do is just wish him luck in Dallas. And the fact that he's the third best player in Dallas is kind of crazy to me.
It's crazy that he's playing with Kyrie, and it's like, ooh, Grant Williams.
It feels so weird because they were two different parts of Celtics history that were both kind of polarizing.
Well, I got something for you guys.
Great.
Stop. All right, man. Stop running the double big. I think it is time to put the double big man lineup to rest. What makes this Celtics team so great is their spacing. not their size. Their size doesn't really play a factor into how the outcome of the game. I think the Celtics need to run with Porzingis lineup and Horford lineup separately. They do not need to be on the court together. And I think that opens up the court, opens up the paint. It allows Porzingis to play his best basketball and Horford to play his best basketball. You run Tatum at that power forwards position, I think, for the foreseeable future. And I think you have to abolish the double big lineup. That's my final takeaway. Anyone else got anything else before we close out the show?
I think tonight they just had to roll with it, really, because
they didn't have a choice. Derek White wasn't there, so he had to play.
No, that's
but
yeah, that's fair. But I mean,
and just in general, like, yeah, I don't know how they're.
All right, you know what? All right, I'll get into it. I won't close out the show. I'll get into it. You didn't have to. You didn't have to run the double big.
What were you going to do? Were you going to start Hauser or Pritchard?
You will make the right rotations where yes, you will, because again, you have those 4 players as a safety blanket. Hauser, Brissett, Stevens will play better when you're playing alongside the 4 best players on your team. They will look better. They will play better. They'll be in the right spots. That's how that works. So I think, yes, when you slot in a guy like O'Shea Brissett to the starting lineup, he's going to look a whole lot better playing next to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown than he is playing next to Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, and Al Horford. Like, that's just how it works. The pressure isn't there. The spacing's there. And you allow Al to come off the bench to replace Porzingis. And I think that just opens everything up. It allows everyone to have more space. And I don't think you need it's like, when was the last time a double big lineup offensively worked?
Tristan Thompson.
Yeah.
We should just end the show on that.
You know what, guys? Thank you so much for joining us.
Ennis Freedom.
The Boston Celtics pick up a 114, a 109. Or sorry, the Boston Celtics drop
that Jeff
a
T.
114,
Tristan Thompson pick and roll was crazy
in Minnesota on the road. Their first loss of the season. They go down to 5-1. However, they will be back in action Wednesday, November 8th at 7:00 tip-off time in Philadelphia at the Wells Fargo Center. That will be on NBC Sports Boston. I almost said ESPN. However, after the final buzzer sounds, guys, come right back here for Celtics Talk Weekly post-game show to catch us live talking about the Celtics game and sometimes some other weird things. But, guys,